On this impromptu edition of the Geopolitics and Empire podcast, we're talking to our friend Rico Brouwer in the Netherlands. His YouTube channel was recently obliterated by Google, and he's joined by Willem Engel, a scientist and human rights activist who has apparently temporarily been banned from entering The Hague. You can tell us more about that. And he's also involved in the ongoing Netherlands lockdown protests and part of the Virus Waarheid or Virus Truth organization, who are involved in organizing demonstrations and litigation against the tyranny of the Dutch state. Welcome, gentlemen. It's a good day to be alive. And how's it going?
Thank you very much. Well, given the circumstances, we're doing fine. Although when I look at the images and the videos, it looks like we have all the fireworks that have not been detonated around New Year's Eve are being detonated now.
Yeah, exactly.
Before we get to the fireworks, I just wanted to ask you, Rico, what in the heck happened with your YouTube, and how is the Potkaars podcast adapting to this attack?
Well, the risk is that if I am very elaborate, it will hurt your channel as well. So I'll choose my words wisely. Oh, you don't care. You'll take it like a war wound. I got the scars to prove it. Okay. All right. So we're both podcasting to YouTube, among other channels. And this summer, I interviewed a Dutch physician who was he got a lot of sick corona patients in his practice, and he was looking for a cure. And I interviewed him on hydroxychloroquine, and he was or rather on how he would approach a patient, and we talked through that medic patient situation with the coronavirus and how would that proceed. Now, that was the first interview that got kicked off YouTube. That's your first warning. Then I interviewed Colleen Huber twice, and she has done an academic study into mouth masks or the risks thereof. Now, the first interview I posted to YouTube got me my second warning, and that was the first official warning. And YouTube does 3 strikes, you're out. So at the 3rd strike, they kill you. So this was my first official strike, my full interview with Colleen Huber, which you can still see on the other channels. It's an interesting lady, has a nice story to tell. I interviewed her again. But before I did that, I talked to Rainer Fulmich. He's a lawyer. He's a German lawyer, also a Californian lawyer. And he's taking, Mr. Drosten to court, basically. He's taking the PCR test to court in what he aspires to become the largest class action lawsuit ever, because all the world is hurt by the PCR test, and he's preparing that. And he talked to me in an interview on November 10th about that. This was my biggest viewer-wise interview for Potkaars. It got over 200,000 views. Now, that was November 10th. I talked to Colleen Huber again on November 16th, so later. That got me my second warning at YouTube. So, I'm scared now. And I told you also at the collaborative interview that we did on November 3rd that I didn't really dare express my opinions on YouTube too much. And also I didn't want to do a New Year's Eve, Old Year's Eve broadcast with you like we did last year, for risk of people expressing themselves in a way that would get me kicked off YouTube. So then Christmas Eve appears. December 25th at night, I get my 3rd warning. So I'm killed. My YouTube channel is murdered because of the Rainer Fulmich interview that was recorded before the one that got me my 2nd warning. So I protested and said to YouTube, well, listen, it's a PCR interview, and the World Health Organization, the ones you're not supposed to be critical of, they're not more nuanced now with regards to PCR. But they said, well, yeah, tough luck, buddy. Well, they didn't really say anything. I just got killed, so my YouTube channel is gone. Now, a friend of mine who I've never met, but who runs the Anonymous Bites Back podcast, he said, well, I got this other channel. It's called Another Voice. You want to broadcast there? So that's what we're doing here. This is my new landing zone for podcast live broadcasts. So I'm on YouTube, and I'm guest in the Another Voice YouTube channel. That's the story about it.
All right. So it's good to hear that you're continuing. I know you're on BitChute, Library, Odyssey, and all of the other places. I'm on BitChute and Brighteon, and soon we'll put my stuff up.
Are you still able to upload in an easy way to BitChute? Is it working still?
It still goes automatically from YouTube as long as I have YouTube. So I guess I'll have to do it manually if and when my YouTube goes down.
It's dead slow for me now. It takes forever to upload and it doesn't render, and it's dead in the water. BitChute. Yeah,
but I mean, we gotta just roll with what we got. And so, one more thing before we look at the statement that came out about civil war in Netherlands, I just wanted to comment, and perhaps we can ask Willem. It's only the beginning of 2021, and I think the first week into the Biden presidency in America, America sent troops into Syria. They're talking of sending them back into Iraq, and they're using the Russian Juan Guaido, Alexei Navalny, to initiate another regime change attempt in Russia. Meanwhile, as I found out, according to the mayor of Eindhoven, Netherlands is on the brink of civil war. But don't feel special, because I don't know if you heard recently, Ray Dalio just stated the obvious, which is that the United States also is on the brink of civil war. And we're seeing this spread of mass civil unrest rising in nations across the planet. I've seen footage from, I think, Denmark, Austria, Canada, Israel, Tunisia, you name it. So, before going further, I thought maybe we can get your views, both Willem and Rico, on what you think COVID-19 actually is, because I think for all of us, our hypothesis is getting refined over the months as we obtain new information and witness how things are playing out. So maybe, Willem, you can start. What is your understanding of Project COVID-19, as I call it, scientifically and medically, just all briefly, and perhaps politically and economically, like the agenda, what's going on?
Yeah, so COVID-19 is a marketing term for an operation which has branches in a political part, in a medical part, and in a commercial part. The commercial part is very clear. COVID-19 is the marketing campaign to sell gene therapy. mRNA vaccines are not vaccines, they are gene therapy. That is without a doubt. Like, that is the definition. If you inject genetic material for the purpose of a treatment, this is the literal definition of gene therapy. Then if you look at the medical part, the proper name for what we now call COVID-19 is SARI, severe acute respiratory infection, which is normally caused by a multitude of pathogens, among which are viruses, are bacteria, are fungi. There are all sorts of causes for this pneumonia-like illness. And then if you look closer to the symptoms, then it becomes very clear this is not one disease. This is SARI. So this is a multitude of immune failures, or immune systems that go haywire, so to say. And for that reason, you will not find the cure against SARI, which they call now COVID-19, and probably the next year COVID or influenza 23. But you will need multiple cures in multiple stages for multiple complexations of this pneumonia-like disease, or diseases, I should say. Then the political scheme, of course, and then we come to the riots, because indeed it is connected. All the measures that have been taken against the so-called pandemic, because if you look at the numbers, there's absolutely no pandemic at the moment. That is complete. Even with the PCR test, they cannot bring it to a pandemic level. But all the measures that are put in place are so restrictive that they oppress society to the brink of collapse. And what you see with all this isolation and basically social torture is that we lose the fabric of society. We lose the cohesion, and we lose the solidarity between people. And then you see these tactics of divide and conquer groups are played against each other. A great example is Black Lives Matter. As if we don't have problems, then let's pull the racial card. So it's a political scheme, and then you listen to the marketing terms. Besides COVID-19, they're now talking a lot about Build Back Better, and Build Back Better is the dot on the horizon after the Great Reset. And so what you now see in the political landscape, the destabilization of all these countries, I have already counted 8 or 9 governments that have fallen, so to say. But of course, the measures are still in place, so they didn't really fall. But they make way for, in a sense, a new world government, and probably it is marketed as a benign overlordship of the United Nations, the WHO, or the European Union, or other international organizations and treaties. It's a plan that will ultimately fail, and that is with all these megalomaniac plans. They will fail because they are produced by people who think they understand how human beings behave and act and interact, but in reality they are just playing out their childhood traumas. And if you see that happening, then eventually we come to the year 2030, and we're not in a brave new world. We're entering in a dystopia where we have to rebuild whole the world, and we're almost in the same position as we were in 1945.
Very succinct. I largely agree with you. Rico, do you have anything to add or subtract regarding what he said in your perspective after all these months?
Yeah, there's a line that I draw when it's speculation to what's going to happen. I never go into that. I don't know what's going to happen. But the analysis of the situation, Willem, I'm impressed. That's a great summary. I largely agree also. The one thing I wanted to add is that I was looking forward to seeing the World Economic Forum top take place this week. They were scheduled this week to be physically together, but there's the Corona situation, so they rescheduled it to the summer. But so there is a online World Economic Forum top apparently this week. But to my surprise, when I switched on the news, because I watch the mainstream media news now, because I'm preparing for these broadcasts every night. We have to get into this broadcast also, why it's at 9 p.m. in the Netherlands. But there's an online climate top now in the Netherlands where all world leaders are hosted in the Netherlands. So is that actually the World Economic Forum top, or how does that work? Does any one of you know?
Yeah, I've looked at it, and a few things. The Green New Deal, that's another marketing term, which is next to the Build Back Better. And I think in this whole scheme, COVID-19 has lost its appeal. A lot of people are tired of it. So what is his name from the WHO? Tedros, but also Gates and Soros and others have already steered away from the virus towards repurposing the lockdowns to have a great climate outcome, which is ludicrous, but it's there. You can look it up. They have said it, so it's an insane world we're living in.
Yeah, and it's insulting. That's what it is. It's insulting to common sense.
Absolutely.
And I wonder if they so we have to go to Mexico also, Wojciech. I mean, you're saying all of the world is now in a civil war or approaching it, but that's something Mexico's been doing that for ages.
Yeah, I mean, that's our natural state, every century revolution. But I mean, there's not going to be much more places to run to. Like, I can't go back to one of my home countries, America, right now, because you have to take a COVID test to go back to the US. So I can't even go back to my own country of other citizenship because I refuse to take these tests. I'm not subjecting myself to taking these tests, and my family and my other country. I'm a EU citizen, Croatian. They just announced von der Leyen that you're going to need these vaccine certificates to fly. So it's just like, basically you can't go anywhere. And I don't doubt some of our politicians in Mexico are working very closely with the Rockefeller Foundation and all of these people. So they're implementing that. They're trying to implement that here in Mexico. I think it'll take a bit longer than in the Netherlands or somewhere else. So what's the story with this mayor in the Netherlands talking about being on the brink of civil war? What's I know, Willem, I just briefly learned about you recently, and you're involved in some of these organizations of these protests or demonstrations.
Yeah.
What's going on in the Netherlands?
Yeah, so we have been trying to protest very peacefully and always with love as the central theme. Love and truth, those are our highest values. I think also for society they should be. But what we have seen is a crackdown on peaceful protests for months after each other. And that has come to a conclusion where we as organizers are left without any influence among the people that are not agreeing with the measures. So it's taken out of our hands. People have been pushed too far, but we cannot keep them quiet or without violence and peaceful, because if you push people too far with curfews, with restrictions that have clearly nothing to do with a virus, and even last week, and this was, I think, the final draw with the curfew being implemented while there is no state of emergency, which is an immediate breaking of the Constitution, which is very clear. But our former Prime Minister, who is now stepped down, but still in office, he literally said in Parliament, well, actually now I'm more powerful because you can't send me away again. And this is a pure provocation for which I believe, if you look at the law, he should have been arrested, because that is such a blatant disrespect for the population, for democracy, and for the rule of law. So I'm not saying that all these people that are rioting are doing that because of this specific remark of the Prime Minister, but it shows a certain pattern of doing it very blatantly, very in your face. The same thing goes for what you mentioned with the PCR tests. Politicians are excluded from this. And that really infuriates everybody. There's such a clear distinction or such clear double standard and different classes. If you read Animal Farm, this is what we are now. You see the pigs and the dogs dining when you look over the little door.
Maybe Roger, can I apologize. So I've memorized that your name is Hervoje, and I always pronounce it like that, and I know it's wrong. Hervoje, that's better. In addition, so we're talking to your international audience here, and I want to extend on what Willem just said. So the Netherlands, we have a prime minister who resigned. So he quit. He went to the king. We are a monarchy. He went to the king and he offered his resignation. Now, in the Netherlands, what happens then is that king says, okay, please mind the shop for me. So you're still in office, but all you do is open the store and take care of that shop until we can elect a new one. Now, the reason he resigned is because of a 10-year-long tax. No, it's not a tax fraud. That's the word that comes to mind. But the revenue service, the tax service in the Netherlands, has for 10 years been hunting people with fraudulent accusations and taking their money away, throwing them into debt, and they were profiling them ethnically. So you're living there, or you're of that ethnicity or that nationality, we're going to hurt you extra because you're probably being fraudulent. Now, a few of our representatives have made an effort for years and have managed to get this out in the open. and it stinks massively. And under his direction, under Mark Rutte, our Prime Minister's direction, because this is his third term already, he's been in office for 10 years, this has been going on. He finally had to resign 3 months before our elections. So we're not speeding up the election process. We're still going to elections on March 17th. At least that's the planning. And he says to our parliament, what are you going to do? I'm only minding the store. By the way, I'm going to continue on the Corona dossier, so I don't consider myself demissionary on that part. So I'm just going to carry on what I was doing, but I'll be out of office for all the other stuff, maybe. So that's why Willem said he's a criminal.
Yeah, we have turned into a complete banana republic. We can never point a finger at any other country again for not following basic human rights, for not following democratic principles. We are the laughingstock of the world. And about the civil war, I think that is an exaggeration. We have riots, but it's not a civil war, and we don't want a civil war. The vast majority of Holland are very peaceful but critical citizens. There is absolutely no majority in favor of these restrictions. That is a falsehood that is constantly propagated by the media, which are in bed with politicians. We have seen so many cases where ministers become part of a newspaper or a news network and then go back and forth. There is no clear distinction between the media and politics in Holland anymore.
Yeah, and what you guys were saying about the Dutch government stepping down, I mean, I wonder if there's something else at play as well, because we just saw the Russian government resigned in Estonia and then some other governments as well. So it's kind of disturbing that all of a sudden a series of governments are stepping down. And, if people who listen to the show know about Technocracy, Technocracy is the system that they're trying to move us into. And in Technocracy, you don't need politicians. So, is that one reason they're all of a sudden getting rid of, this quantity of politicians? Because, in the future, they call it algocracy, ruled by algorithm and scientific experts. So that's just something interesting.
Absolutely. I completely agree with that assertion.
Now, hang on. The reason that our Prime Minister and his cabinet stepped down has to do with the fraud that was in the making over the last 10 years. So things might converge. I agree there, but this was the reason I don't see a different agenda there.
I want to nuance it a little bit. This was the excuse to step down, which was already planned.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, we just mentioned also a bit before moving on what Willem said about the rules, the animal farm. I mean, I was researching the EU vaccination travel certificate policies, and it literally said that on the EU official website that for the politicians, it doesn't apply for them. But for us, we have to do all of, get these vaccine digital passports, but and the PCR test, but they don't have to do that. And furthermore, if you have enough money to hire private charter flights, you don't wear any masks or do any PCR tests when you charter private jets. And so, they're exempt. So it's totally animal farm. I just had another question regarding the protests in Netherlands. I think a lot of us know about agent provocateurs. And I'm wondering if during the Netherlands protests, if you've witnessed the state sending undercover. All governments have done this. We've seen this happen in Canadian protests in America, because I saw a video recently, I don't know if it was Denmark or the Netherlands, where protesters, citizens acting peacefully and lawfully in their protests, pointed out a bunch of cops who were trying to create violence as a pretext to end the protests. And people can find these videos online. So
Yeah, so this is now standard practice, and we have so much proof, but the police and the mayor, they refuse to do any investigation into this. But it's clear as day. We have these groups of thugs hired by the police. They are hooded or with a mask, so they are undercover. They're not recognizable as police officers, yet they come out of the vans of the police and they stir up riots. This is exactly what's happening.
And something else interesting right before, because we kind of put this podcast together impromptu today, and to see what's going on with these lockdowns in Netherlands. And this afternoon, just like an hour or two ago, I tweeted out the fact that I was interviewing you, Rico, and you, Willem, and included a recent interview you did, Willem, with Dr. Sucharit Bhakti, who for the people who have been following what's been going on the last few months should know about this German educated physician or doctor who's speaking out against the corona measures. And something happened today on Twitter that I've never seen before. Almost immediately, like in real time, there started to appear dozens and dozens and dozens of comments attacking and name calling you, Willem, and myself and Rico, just ripping on us on the Twitter post, which has never happened to me before. And I don't know if listeners are aware that, NATO governments, America, Chinese and Russians, they have military information warfare units, such as the 77th Brigade in England, whose job is on social media and online to viciously attack anyone going against the official established narrative. And so, and today I saw Twitter just launched something today called Bird Watch that allows people to rate and write notes on so-called misleading information. And so, this could be part of Operation Mockingbird Watch in action, and so on. And so for me, it seems like this is information warfare operations against us, mixed in with real people angry with you, Willem. And, one proof for me is this, that the speed with which it occurred, the types of accounts, the immediate resort to vicious name-calling, shaming, and being so angry and irrational with us. So, are you attacked? What would you say on this? And the people that attack you, what's your response to their criticism and arguments?
Yeah, so I think you made a fairly good summary of that whole landscape of internet trolls. You have people that are just mal-informed. You also have people that are paid to incite internet violence, so to say. So I've been doing this for a few months now, but this amount of trolls that I have to block, maybe 100 a day on certain media platforms, that is also a high score for me. And it's also confirmed from people within the military that I speak to that indeed there are these kind of practices. So your assertion is completely correct. And what we see there is very similar to what we see in real life with these thugs that climb from the police vehicles and are hooded and are inciting violence in these demonstrations. A very similar effect is done online. So most of those accounts are just joining the frenzy, so to say, and they are mostly real people, just badly informed. And stirring up this scapegoating technique, but of course there's a lot of paid troll accounts which probably are military or intelligence and cyber warfare units.
Yeah, but you have to extend on that also. I mean, tell this is the international audience. I mean, when I got to know you, I got to know a very outspoken new activist. And you propagate love and non-violent resistance, but people were banging at your door. I think, in short, you need to relay that story also. It's not just online.
Yeah. No. Unfortunately, because I became such a well-known person, and they cannot silence my speech anymore. It's too big now. So there's other tactics that are employed as well. We had a news show trying to bash me with hate speech. So they invite lawyers or reporters, and then I'm not there at the news show, but they invite them to stir up the violence against me. And this was indeed the case. I had an attacker at my place. We just installed cameras because we saw this happening on this news show for a week long, and then the amount of threats went up enormously. And then the attacker literally had the same speech, the same sentences as that were propagated in this news show. So it's a one-on-one. It's when there's a lot of negative publicity incited or paid for by the government, then of course you have the consequences of that. So at the moment, I try to have as peaceful posts as possible, but I will not be silenced. I will always speak the truth. So the measures are torture. It is unjust, and the government has to account for later on in the court of law.
Yeah, I feel the same way. You know, I always look to my grandfather as a guiding light. He stood up, I guess, ideologically to the Nazis in Croatia. You know, Croatia for 3 years in the 40s became a Nazi regime. You know, Croatia cooperated with the German Nazis, and I suppose my grandfather opposed that, and he for 6 months was held in a hole in the ground. I'm sure it changed his life experience. And the same way as myself, you know, my great-grandfather died in World War I. That was my grandfather's experience with the Nazis in World War II. When I was a kid, you know, we had the war in Yugoslavia. So each generation is touching us. And the truth is the truth. You know, I don't care what you're going to do to us. I want to look at my kids. And if we have grandkids, if we get to that point, that they can, you know, they can be proud of their forefathers. Are there any other points with Corona, the lockdowns, that you want to make, and, you know, going forward, you know, what do you see happening right now and going forward in the coming months?
Yeah, can I do this first? We started this conversation with the YouTube censorship, and I decided to not create a new YouTube account for myself, even though I'm streaming here. This is not my account, I'm a guest. What I would like everybody to do is to look at companies that make the same effort. I mean, Willem has been threatened, and he says, "Well, I'm not giving up. I'm not giving in. I'm not giving up." Your voice, you said, "If this happens to me, I'm not giving up. I'll just adapt and find a new way because this is too important." What I would like people to think about is, if you're deleted from YouTube or Instagram or Facebook or whatever, Twitter, are you really going to create a new account? Because it starts to feel like you're going back to an abusive partner. Just going back to be beaten up again. So why are you moving back into your Instagram? People are wearing their Instagram deletions as badges of honor. I had 20,000 followers and I'm back. I've got 2 war scars now, or 3. I've been deleted 4 times. I'm the winner. No, you're the winner when you leave and you support Parler or whatever other environments are out there. And you say to the people that are left, that are behind, say, well, let's just go there. They don't delete people for their opinion. So that's something that everybody has to do. And that's when at least we're using ourselves to protect free speech. Now, hang on, no. In addition to that, we are now under a curfew in the Netherlands. That means you're not allowed on the street between 9 p.m. and 4:30 a.m. with an exception. And one of the exceptions that they made is you are allowed out if you're making it to mainstream media television shows. So if you're a guest to one of the big programs, then you're allowed to break the curfew. So this is the reason that I'm now streaming to YouTube this live broadcast, inviting people to my couch to have discussions here. And I'm giving them their exempt form to show the cops if they're stopped on their way back home, and see how that plays out. We have to struggle for free speech. So this was my answer.
Yeah, well, I completely agree. We still have to fight the media and social media, and I think that is the most important fight. Politicians are mainly vain, stupid, and easily manipulatable. So I don't see the biggest fight or the biggest arena there, but it's really the media corporations and the social media corporations. How we have to do that is by doing what we're doing, by making news, by making news shows, by constantly exposing the fraud and showing the truth. and never waver from our path. Our values are the strongest. They are what defines us as human beings. If we start to give in or to compromise in order to gain influence or control, we're already lost. You're playing the game again. The only way out is to really strive for autonomy. And I don't only mean autonomy, the physical autonomy, but the mental and the emotional autonomy. If we are free in our thinking and in our feeling, they can never enslave us.
Good points to leave us with. I would agree with both of you and Rico as well. Someone who I really like, Dan Dix of Press for Truth in Canada, he recently tweeted that YouTube reinstated his account. And so he was like playing with that. And it's like, I would agree. Once they've burned the bridge, that's it. You know, you're not going back and you're just moving on. You described it exactly perfectly well, Rico. Where do we find, I guess the best places now for us, for people to find us, is directly on our websites. Rico, where's the best place to find you, and Willem, you as well?
All right, so I started the Potkaars podcast, which is, and I'm going to do it again, so your English audience would associate pot and the Dutch with something else, but it's actually flower pot with kaars, which is a candle, pot with candle, conversations with hope. Potkaars.nl, which is my show. It has also English spoken interviews, and that's the thing that I'm doing. However, I registered the manystream.media DNS handle, and also manystreammedia.nl and manystreammedia.com. And we have talked about this earlier, even a year ago, I think, when I first pitched it to you. I still haven't finished it, but I'm about to start an alternative. We are going to our own website. We're going to host our own content, and we are going to take back the abbreviation MSM. MSM is not owned. There's no copyright on MSM. It's legacy. It's old. It used to stand for mainstream media, but that thing's obsoleted. It's obsoleted itself. So what we need to do is replace that abbreviation with something that works. So that's the mainstream media. And Roger knows we're going to do together. So you're going to fill in the English spoken branch of that. But bear with me. I'm doing late night shows now, so it's taking some time to get there.
And Willem, I'll put the links in the description, but tell us, where do we best find you?
It's literally virus truth, but then in Dutch. So virus is spelled the same, but truth is WAARHEID.nl. And there you can find many links to scientific articles, to articles about news or economy or politics, but mainly, of course, what we do most and what we do best is to do a lot of litigation. We have fought already, I think, 9 or 10 injunctions. We have won one, and we are about to win many more. If the judge that we get is a real judge instead of a collaborator, and that only time will tell.
Well, there is an interesting one. I don't know if you want to wrap up, maybe on this thing then, Roy, because you mentioned I can't go back to my country, which is the United States, because if I want to go back, I am to undergo mandatory PCR tests, and I refuse to do that. Now, there's a Dutch lady who is in Israel, and she went there because her mom used to live there. Her mom passed away this December. She was in Israel and she wanted to fly back January. However, the Dutch government had imposed a new rule by then saying, well, if you want to fly back before boarding the plane, you are to undergo a mandatory PCR test and show the negative results. Otherwise, you're not allowed to board. Now, this goes against international regulations even more than Dutch law, because the international agreements, they're even more important than whatever laws we come up with here locally. This is the ruling that Willem is awaiting this Thursday, because he was doing that legal battle with that lady together last week. And I streamed that from the courtroom. So all the Netherlands can hear that conversation taking place in the courtroom. And a part of it is in English. So you want to put that in the links as well. This is an Israeli human rights lawyer who very explicitly made the case why this judge can only rule in favor of Virus Waarheid and this lady from Israel. My question to you, Voye, is, can they, under American law, make you undergo a medical procedure, or are they not also allowed to take you back in at the very least?
I think we're under the Fourth Reich, right? Global Nazi dictatorship, literally, because I did the interview with Edwin Black, the Jewish historian, and some of the same people behind the Nazis, American and German interests and corporations, are some of the same people now providing the solutions for the whole COVID situation. And I think we can still drive in without taking the test. But you're right. It's like, constitutionally, how can you not allow a citizen to return to his own country? But then it's difficult because they've told the airlines. So here, like, for example, in Mexico, the airline won't let me get on the plane to get to the country. So you're stopped right there, and the airline doesn't care. I can't argue with the airline anything. I could take my car and drive across the border, which I guess they'll let me in so far. But I don't have an answer for that.
Okay. Well, neither do we. Other than taking them to court.
Well, hopefully that that sets a precedent, and more people start doing this. We're seeing court battles all across the world in different countries. All right, so let me just remind Geopolitics and Empire listeners that for now, my primary points of contact are the email list, which you can subscribe to, and I'm enjoying very much the Telegram channel that we have, so you can sign up there. I have a feeling that we won't be much longer up on YouTube. We might follow Rico down the hole, and perhaps Twitter as well, with the whole bird watching thing that they put out just today. And so you can find Geopolitics and Empire on most other alternative channels. So keep up the amazing work, Rico and Willem. Don't be discouraged. And when I say we're all in this together, I mean we're all in this together against our corrupt and tyrannical local, state, and national governments and the global elite behind them. So thanks for being on, and Godspeed.
Thank you, man. Let's talk soon again.
I hope you enjoyed this Geopolitics and Empire podcast and interview. I would like to remind you that our website is geopoliticsandempire.com, and you can sign up for our mailing list that goes out each weekend with the latest podcast and a long collection of important news headlines. It's good to sign up for the newsletter in case we experience censorship and deplatforming. You can help the Geopolitics and Empire podcast by subscribing to and interacting with all of our channels such as YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Gab, Minds, and Steemit. You can also help us by leaving a rating and review on your favorite podcast platforms such as iTunes, Castbox, Stitcher, Spreaker, and so on. Finally, if you value our work and our mission and would like to see us continue interviewing experts from across the political spectrum, please consider leaving a one-time donation via PayPal or Bitcoin, or becoming a regular monthly supporter on our Patreon. All the links can be found on geopoliticsandempire.com. Thanks for listening.